Welcome to the Quickstart guide to the carnivore diet. No fluff, no filler, just everything you need to be really successful your first month or two on carnivore. I'm Jenny. I've been on carnivore for over a year. This is the video that I wish I had watched before I started this way of eating, and it contains some fundamental information that's really going to set you up for success down the road. The carnivore diet includes all animal products. That means all meat, all seafood, eggs, butter, and some people include dairy. Typically on carnivore, it starts as a higher fat, medium protein style of eating. Now that can adjust as you stay on carnivore for a longer period of time, but the typical guidance is to start off at 70% fat to 30% protein. Macros are really easy to track using the free MyFitnessPal app. And also, since you're keeping your fat ratio pretty high, I want you to pay attention to your protein. You need to make sure that you're getting your minimum protein goals for the day. Now there's lots of ways that you can calculate what your minimum protein intake should be for the day. What I like to do is I like to take my ideal weight, which is 130 pounds, and then I do 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal weight. So 130 pounds ideal weight, I should be getting a minimum daily intake of 130 grams of protein per day. Your minimum protein is going to look a little bit different than mine, but just make sure that most days you are hitting at least the minimum. This is going to help combat any feelings of fatigue and keep you in tip-top shape. As far as cooking oils and fats, make sure you're keeping it animal products only. So you're looking at butter, bacon grease, lard, suet, tallow, and you're going to want to cut out any kind of vegetable seed oils. Also, for the time being, you're going to want to cut out olive oil and avocado oil. Just cut out anything that is not an animal product. Now, the carnivore diet does not include any plant materials, so you may have heard of the popular meat and fruit diet. I would not consider that to be the carnivore diet. I would consider that to be more like animal-based or meat-based. Now, if you're coming to carnivore trying to lose weight or to improve your metabolic health, I strongly suggest you do not start with the meat and fruit diet. Perhaps down the line, when you've met your weight loss goal or when you've improved your metabolic health dramatically, you could try to incorporate more fruit and things like that into your diet. But for now, I think you should just keep it to strict carnivore, only animal products. Now, there is a caveat to that. Some carnivores still use spices like garlic powder, onion powder, always salt, pepper, things like that. I think it depends on if you have sensitivities to those things, and always make sure you're reading the ingredients label. Another thing, a lot of carnivores still drink coffee. You can make that decision for yourself at this point. I think the main thing you need to focus on is just keeping your food items animal products. If you want to have some coffee, if you're going to use some garlic powder, I don't really think that's that big of a deal. There's a few things I'd like you to do before you start day one on carnivore. First, I want you to take a baseline weight and at least a couple of measurements. I would say at minimum, take a chest, a waist, and a hip measurement. If you're into data and you have a little bit of time, I would highly recommend getting a baseline DEXA scan, and I would also recommend getting a little bit of baseline blood work. In the description of this video, I have put links to DEXA's website so you can find out where you can get one of those. And I've also put a link to ownyourlabs.com. This is where I order all of my blood work. There's only a few states in the United States that won't allow you to self-order or self-pay for blood work. So I've also listed out the bare minimum blood work numbers I think you should get done, just so you can kind of compare your previous way of eating with the carnivore diet. If you don't want to do the DEXA, don't want to do the blood work, that's totally fine. At bare minimum, please just take your weight and do a couple of baseline measurements so you can track your progress. Next step, I recommend clearing out your pantry and your refrigerator from any food that is not carnivore. I recognize that a lot of people won't be able to do this. They have other people living in their house that aren't going to be following this way of eating, but I do recommend clearing out anything that's a weakness to you. So if you love Oreos, if you love goldfish crackers, get them out of the house. I also recommend doing carnivore with either your partner or with somebody that you're living with. Of course, this is not a requirement, but it just makes it easier if you're both eating the same food. Next, you need to hit the grocery store before you start. I have a free comprehensive grocery list that I can send you. You head over to my Instagram page, follow me over there, and then send me a message asking for this grocery list. I will send it right over to you, and then you'll have it on your phone. Don't feel like you need to buy everything on this list. It's just listing out every possibility that you could possibly buy, but I think at bare minimum, you should have some organic pastured eggs, some 80-20 ground beef, maybe some chicken, some pork, definitely some grass-fed butter as well, and of course, bacon. Also, don't feel like you need to eat everything on the list. If you personally don't eat beef, if you don't eat pork, if there's a meat that just doesn't sit right with you, if you don't like eggs, you absolutely do not have to include those things on your version of the carnivore diet. You just need to tailor carnivore to your tastes, your preferences, and your budget. Speaking of budget, a great way to save money on meat is to head to the grocery store and look for meat that has been discounted because it needs to be sold by that day. Typically, it's like 50% off. I asked the meat manager at my grocery store, when they do their markdowns, and he said they do them like first thing in the morning, like 6:30 a.m. So I try to hit the grocery store around 8:30, and man, I find amazing deals. So that's a really great tip to try to find cheaper meat. So you've cleared out your pantry and your fridge, you have done your grocery shopping. Now I want you to do some meal prep. Boil a dozen eggs, cook up a bunch of burgers, cook a pound of bacon, start a pot roast, whatever you need to do so that you have some carnivore meals cooked and ready to go. Now it's finally time to start. On that very first day of carnivore, when you get hungry for the first time, I want you to eat until you are comfortably stuffed. And then I want you to do that exact same thing at every meal after that. Now, what does that look like, comfortably stuffed? Well, it's going to look different for every person. You could do a 16-ounce ribeye with some butter. You could do 6 eggs with 9 pieces of bacon. You could do 3 pork chops and a piece of fish. Everybody's going to feel comfortably stuffed with a different amount of food. You just have to figure out what that looks like for you. So what is the feeling of being comfortably stuffed? Well, the way I like to describe it is if you were to take one more bite, you would feel really uncomfortable, like almost sick even. But you're at that point of being satiated enough to where you're like, I don't need any more food. I don't want any more food. I'm good. Then the next step is don't eat again until you are truly hungry. Now, this takes a little bit of practice because we've all been, conditioned to do breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks throughout the day, when in reality, we really don't need to eat that much. So over the next month, what I want you to do is just train your body to only eat when you're truly hungry. In the beginning, the first couple of months, that could be 1 meal a day, 2 meals a day, 3 meals a day. It's going to be different for every person. But in the beginning, don't worry too much about the interval between meals. Just eat until you're comfortably stuffed at every meal, and then don't eat again until you're truly hungry. Getting used to eating this way is one of the keys to success on carnivore, so I think you should just start right in the beginning and get used to it. As you continue eating this way, the intervals between your meals are going to get longer and longer, and your body is going to naturally relax into a feeding cadence that's right for it. You don't need to force it. You don't need to start off by doing long fasts or anything like that. It's going to happen naturally. One day you're just going to wake up and be like, oh, wow, I haven't eaten in 18 hours, and then go a couple more hours without eating, and it's not really going to be a drop in the bucket. That will happen naturally as you continue on carnivore. We've gone over the basics. Now let's talk about a couple of roadblocks you might encounter in your first couple of months on carnivore. Over the first month, you may encounter carbohydrate withdrawal, or what's more commonly referred to as the keto flu. Symptoms include fatigue, diarrhea, constipation, restlessness, lack of energy, anxiety, and a few other things. Keto flu happens because your body is switching over from using glucose as its main fuel source over to ketones. It takes a few weeks for your body to get adjusted to that, and it's nothing to worry about. You can counteract the worst of these symptoms by drinking electrolytes as soon as you wake up in the morning. There's tons of different brands out there, but the one that I use is Element, LMNT, and I use the raw unflavored. I have a link in the description where you can get a free sample pack with any Element order. Head over and click that. I would recommend getting a box of the raw unflavored Element, and then you get the samples. You can try out the flavors and see if you want to order more. My other 2 favorite flavors that they have is the watermelon and the mango chili. If you cannot afford to purchase electrolytes at this time, that's totally fine. Just take a teaspoon of salt, mix it with 16 to 24 ounces of water, and drink it immediately upon waking. If you feel fatigue or just worn out throughout the day, I would recommend repeating this process a couple more times. This is especially important in the first month or 2 on carnivore to manage your electrolyte levels. Listen to your body and rest when you can. For me, the first 4 to 6 weeks on carnivore, I really didn't go to the gym because I was completely wiped and just out of it. But it doesn't stay that way forever, and that clears up within a few weeks. My keto flu symptoms lasted a long time, but for most people, it's 2 to 3 weeks. And the severity of the keto flu varies from person to person. You might not even have any keto flu symptoms at all. Another roadblock you might encounter is getting really mouth bored with meat. When I hit about the 3-week mark, I just couldn't even look at another steak. I know, #first world problems, but It was just making me sick. I just couldn't even imagine eating another steak. I am here to let you know that that will 100% go away. Once you've trained yourself to only eat when you're truly hungry, you could eat a steak every day for the rest of your life, and you are going to enjoy it just as much on day 365 as you did on day 30. And that's it. For that first month, I just want you to eat until you are comfortably stuffed at every meal, and then do not eat again until you are truly hungry. Rinse and repeat. Make sure you're eating enough in a day though. The typical guidance is to eat 1 to 4 pounds of meat per day, and of course that's going to vary person to person. Drink those electrolytes in the morning and then throughout the day if you're feeling a bit of fatigue. I think you should fully commit to at least 30 days on the carnivore diet. Really, I would say 90 days, but just start with that first 30 and reevaluate then, and then maybe add on a recommitment of another 30 days. But 90 days is when you're really going to start seeing a lot of the benefits from carnivore. Also, during those first 30 days, try your hardest to not have any fruit, vegetables, grains, alcohol, any kind of processed foods, any kind of sugar. Really try to do strict carnivore. The more strict you are in the beginning, the easier it's going to be to get over those sugar withdrawals and to get away from carbs. So I really suggest trying to be as strict as possible for those 30 days. Now, this is a very basic video just to get you started on carnivore for the first month or two. If you would like more in-depth information along with answers to some questions you may have, I want you to click on this video right here. It's meaty, so I have split it up into chapters, but it will have all the information you need to be really successful on the carnivore diet. You can totally do this. I was a complete skeptic when I started carnivore, and now I just passed my 1-year mark and I've lost over 40 pounds. My metabolic health has improved across the board, and I'm so happy that I found this way of eating because it's super simple and it's delicious. If you have any questions at all, please leave them in the comment section below or send me a message over on Instagram. I am very, very responsive to my comments and my messages. And with that, I will see you in the next video.